Rigtig hjertelig velkommen til CFL's podcast Ledelsesrummet, som denne gang handler om at forudse de ledelseskapabiliteter eller ledelsesevner, vi skal have for at imødegå fremtiden. De fleste organisationer oplever en omverden og dermed et ledelsesrum, der er blevet mere dynamisk, og at det handler mindre om at optimere den daglige drift, og måske i højere grad om at ansætte og udvikle de rigtige mennesker i lederrollen. Til at gøre os klogere på det emne, har vi i dagens udgave fået besøg af en person, der i den grad beskæftiger sig med emnet, nemlig Scott Blanchard. Scott er President of the Scott Blanchard Companies, organisationen, der har skabt verdens nok mest udbredte ledelsesudviklingskoncept, nemlig situationsbestemt ledelse, eller SL2, som vi vælger at kalde det. Scott er en globalt anerkendt ekspert inden for ledelsesudvikling. Han har dedikeret sin karriere til at hjælpe ledere på alle niveauer og på alle kontinenter med at frigøre deres potentiale og skabe meningsfuld forandring. Vi skal høre hans indsigt i, hvordan ledelse udvikler sig, og hvilke evner han mener vil være afgørende for at navigere i fremtidige udfordringer. Mit navn er Lars Hemmingsen. Jeg er Strategic Leadership Consultant her hos CFL, og jeg har fornøjelsen af at være jeres gæstevært de næste godt 20 minutter. Scott er rejst fra San Diego for at tale på CFL's Briefing Executive, og det er super dejligt, at Scott også har sagt ja til at deltage her i Ledelsesrummet. Og nu lidt skifter jeg over til engelsk og giver ordet til Scott Blanchard. God fornøjelse. What is the most important capability a leader must have today?
The number one, by far most important thing is that leaders must demonstrate to their people trust. They must have their back. They have to create the condition where their people trust them.
During this podcast, we'll try to unfold how leadership is evolving and what capabilities will be essential to navigate future challenges. And we'll do that by talking into two aspects, the employee work passion and leadership in uncertainty and chaos. So Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lars. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start out by the first aspect, the employee's work passion. Would you start out by giving me an example of what you mean by work passion?
Yeah. So employee work passion is a definition that we've created at Blanchard over the last 12 or 13 years, and it's an extension beyond employee engagement. So Marcus Buckingham developed that in published form first in his book, First Break All the Rules, where he defined that an employee's engagement or their emotional condition at work really matters. So employee work passion is engagement, but it's the next step because it matters what we think and what we feel, but the biggest thing is what do we conclude? And as a result, what attitudes do we develop? And what we found is that attitudes that employees develop that stand up to pressure, which are, attitudes that they stick with through, hard times, good times, or whatever, are called intentions. And an intention is very, very important because somebody could have good or bad opinions about things at work, but if they still are committed to doing the job, to cooperating with other people, to bringing everything that they have from a discretionary energy, they talk about their firm or their company that they respect it and they like it, and they also are not looking for another job. That's what we're talking about. It's what do we do with our feelings? And some people have very strong positive feelings, but yet they don't stand up to pressure. And other people have a mixed set of opinions around work, but they have a very strong intention to perform and to serve. And so that's what matters most.
Great. And how do you, when you look at people, how do you sort of detect whether they have that passion or not?
I mean, it can be felt, it can be observed, but ultimately, do people think about their coworkers? Do they think about the company? Do they think about the customers they serve? Do they think about the quality of the work before they think about their own feelings and their own selves. And when people are thinking about others first, it's not that they're not concerning themselves, but when they think about others first, those are the kind of attitudes that are so important to succeeding in life and to being able to do the things that we want, which is to cooperate, deal with change, deal with problems and stress. But if people are only thinking about themselves and how they feel, and that's their measuring stick for the way that they perform, it's very, very difficult, for those people to meet many of the challenges that we have today, which is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of conflict in the world, a lot of worry. But it's like, despite that, can we still be in a position where we think about others other than ourselves?
And I'm going to relate to actually a conversation you and I had earlier today in how do you looking forward and hiring new people at basically any level, but maybe if you look at top level, what are the sort of the questions? You came up with a great couple of questions to ask.
Well, it's really important. I learned from a guy named Adam Robinson something that has never left me. The only thing that we can really control is who we hire, is who we put on the payroll. Because once somebody is into the company, into the organization, public or private, once they are an employee, we have to trust them eventually to do their job. But if we hire somebody that comes in because of their background or because of their trauma, previous work experiences, how they were raised or whatever, but if they see themselves as with a victim mentality or what's referred to in the research as having an external reference of control, which means that my success and my outcomes are not determined by me, but determined by luck, or they're determined by the organization, or they're determined by others. If my success comes from outside of me, then it's very, very hard to get those people to really dig in to the things that we need. And the most important thing is that people believe that despite whatever circumstances they're in, they have choice, they have the ability, they have the capacity within themselves to make the best of it. To make the best of it. The most classic example from history was when Mandela in prison for so many years, right? And he had every reason, every justification to come out and want to retaliate against the captors, but he came out with a goal towards forgiveness and peace, and this is what he spoke about, this is what his life was about. He made that choice, even though he was unjustly imprisoned for all those years. And so no matter what circumstance we're in, we can choose to affect our destiny, or we can choose to have this belief or this set that our external, conditions really guide our lives. And some of the people that have the most privilege in the world are the least happy because they spend all their time defending it, like people are trying to steal things from them. And some people that we would seemingly have the least are often very happy because they feel like they can control their day, they can make the best of it, they can choose. And so we really want to hire people that no matter what, they believe in their heart they can make a difference in their lives and the lives of other people. And the interesting thing is, whatever your belief set, you're right. If you believe that you can affect your own destiny, if you believe you can make things better, you're right, because you can always choose. But if you believe that you can't do it and it's required, other circumstances are required, you're also going to be correct. And so we teach this to kids in middle school and in high school because it's your life. You can choose. And people either buy into that or they tend to, again, play that position of there's something else that's controlling my life other than me.
So what is the question or the questions that you want to ask?
Well, there's one really great question is to ask somebody, tell me about a time that you set a meaningful professional goal that you failed to achieve. And then listen to the story. And you'll hear a story of a meaningful professional goal. And what they'll typically talk about is something that was harder than they thought or wasn't as they seemed. They made a mistake in judgment. Something happened that they didn't plan or whatever. But they talk about it without, like as if it was a learning experience. And oftentimes they talk about how they persevered or what they learned from it or what lessons they took from it, versus the other side. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about the reason that they didn't succeed is somebody else was abusive to them, somebody else kept them from succeeding, they became a victim, and they'll talk about failed experiences, bad bosses, bad colleagues, bad luck through their entire experience. And as soon as you start to hear the stories from people's past about different ways that they've been victimized, and the interview, and just don't hire that person, because here's what the research says, is if somebody has the mindset that goes towards being, a victim, no matter what circumstances they've in, versus owning and taking responsibility, there's a 40% greater likelihood that that person that has this internal focus of control will succeed in any job versus a person that has the external reference. And in North America anyway, it's about 50-50. So you really want to hire the top 50% or the people that they believe that they can make a difference through their own effort, their own thought, their own work.
All right. And that sounds really interesting. And how would you advise leaders to nurture that kind of behavior in the organization?
Well, what's very interesting is leadership has a huge influence on people, and if people have an internal reference of control and they work for a leader who is coercive or oppressive or whatever, they find a way to change the situation and they will often leave, right? And if people that have an external reference of control, if they're working for a leader that's that way, a lot of times they tend to stay, they become victim again, and it actually makes it worse. And so leadership causes people to be more of who they are. And it's like more of a victim, more, this is what I'm used to. I'm expecting that the manager is going to affect my career, and I can go home and I can talk about that. Versus the people that have the internal reference, they will find a way to move on. And typically your best people, when confronted with working for a boss that's not toxic, they find a way to create a different situation for themselves. And they don't necessarily blame the boss, but they just go find something else to do, or they find a different outlet, or they find a way around the situation that they find themselves. So leadership can really cause people that have the potential to succeed to really dig in and not perform well, if through their leadership, through the way they influence people.
And when you meet those people that sort of tell that story of being a victim, can you change their behavior? Do you believe you can do that? You can change their attitude. We actually have a program for 34 years now. We teach a program at the frontline level, non-manager level. It's called self-leadership, and the first thing we do is we teach 3 mindsets. And we teach people first about power, but not traditional power. We teach them about understanding the power that they possess through knowledge, through skill, through the tasks that they do, through the relationships that they can create. So we teach people that if you don't have position power, there's still a lot of power you can gain. The second thing is we teach them to challenge their assumed constraints, or it's also called in the research limiting beliefs, right? And we have beliefs that we come up with, but we can change those beliefs from I can't to I can. And the third is we teach people to be proactive. There's an old adage, if you don't ask, then the answer is always no. But when you ask, at least you might get a yes, but if not, then you've taken the time and the effort to raise your hand and be proactive. And so most people, when they have regret at the end of the day, some people have regret because they didn't do something. They didn't say something. They didn't assert themselves. And that's an internal regret. If we tried and it didn't work, it's a less damaging regret from a day. At least I tried, at least I asked, at least I raised my hand, at least I know where I stand, versus the other one is you just never said anything. So it's really, really important. You can change it. We can change it in kids. We can change it in kids in high school, certainly in employees, because a lot of what we learn from our upbringing.
and from those early years.
All right, so you talk a lot about engagement. I can really buy into that, and a deep sense of engagement and a can-do attitude, and also listen for the stories about people feeling victimized. That's not a good way of working, and that does not create a safe environment. So moving on to the second aspect, which is the leadership in uncertainty and chaos. Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's a chaotic time. It was a chaotic time 12 years ago. It was a chaotic time 20 years ago. It was certainly a chaotic time 40 years ago. But today is the chaotic time that we're all experiencing now with conflicts, with deep divisions, with the internet and the news cycle, which is fueling these divisions. And with a lot of uncertainty, it creates and a lot of expectation. It makes it very, very hard, to lead people. And I do not deny this, and I think it's 100% true. And then the question is, so what do we do in response to anxiety, to uncertain times? And what the research is very clear on research is that two things are required, and the more difficult the situations, the more these two things are required. And the first thing is human beings need something to believe in. They need a reason to endure. They need a future state that they can see. We can get through this. They need to see something in the future that can get them inspired and help them process the difficulty they're going through. That's number one. But the second is we need things to do in the immediate moment. And when we've studied the best leaders, especially under pressure, they inspire people for the future about where we're headed, but they don't spend a lot of time there, but they're clear about where we're going. But what they do is they spend time on planning the day, winning the day, planning the morning, winning the morning, planning the afternoon, winning the afternoon. And so the thing is, all we can control is what we can control today. And if we are doing something in every moment that is actually moving us in the correct direction, then people's minds and their hands and their hearts that can be occupied. The leaders that are terrible in emergencies, they don't focus at all on what to do now, but they reinforce how scared we should be, because otherwise, about all the bad things going on. And when people come in and they're worried about things that are happening in the world that they can't control, and I'm very worried about things that are happening in my country. We've got a big election coming up. If you really want to go down the worry path, we can have a glass of wine and really start to talk about it. There's a lot to worry about. But fundamentally, those worries, they are things that we can't control, or we can maybe figure out a way to be in a better position. But ultimately, we need things to do right now, here and now. And so I'm constantly reminding myself as I wake up in the morning, who do I want to be today? What do I want to accomplish today? What's the best thing that I can do? In the neuroscience now, they're talking about three different things that are really important. One is when I am worried. There's two types. One is I have anxiety, and anxiety is an alert state, and I have adrenaline coursing through my system, but I also have cortisol. And cortisol is what happens when I'm thinking about the future or I'm reflecting on the past. And cortisol is a hormone that suppresses the frontal cortex and gets us into this limbic system response, which is fight, flight, and literally we don't think as clearly because we're preparing for something physical, something dangerous to happen. It's a big difference between that and being nervous. And so nervous is adrenaline, it's a heightened thing, but it's not worrying about tomorrow. It's not worried about now, but it's taking that nervousness and doing something right now. And what we need to do as leaders is teach people to be composed. And composure is this place where no matter what we're facing, that we maintain enough composure so we can do the most effective things in the moment that will cause us to basically do the best and not the worst things under pressure. And so the more pressured situations are, the more we need to do as leaders is to demonstrate that we are calm, or to maintain as much calm as we can, and that we're focused on carrying on and doing the things that we can do in the moment. Because it's so easy to get lost in the anxiety. But what are we going to do between now and lunch? What are we going to do before the end of the day? What are you going to do tonight when you go home, so that at least you're busying your mind and your hands and what you're doing on something that's useful?
So you're saying that the leaders today, they need to be composed, and they need to have skills when it comes to actually being composed and absorbing some of these strong feelings or even anxiety, as you talk about, in order to actually protect the next level in the organization. So do you see it as being harder to be a leader today than 5 years ago?
I think there's never been a harder time since I've been alive to be a leader right now. Maybe specific moments, but it is very challenging, not only because of what's happening in the world, but coming out of the pandemic, the way that we work has changed. The desire to be hybrid or to work from home or people to choose, the way that everything has become, more digital, the incredible surge of influence from our staff members about what they want and what they won't tolerate anymore, an incredible need for more inclusion. It's really tricky. And then also we've got AI happening right now, which everybody's going crazy about. We've also got, customers who are struggling with the same things. And there's never been a trickier time to be a leader, but there's also never been, I think, a more exciting time to be a leader. And for me, the big question is, for organizations, are you investing in providing your leaders with the best possible opportunity to lead your people away from anxiety, recognize the nervousness of the situation, but help people become as composed as they can every day, so when they go home at the end of the day, they know, despite this crazy world we're in, they worked a good day today. They lived a good day today, and they feel proud, and they don't feel ashamed about what happened at work. And I think that's what the leaders need to do, is to keep people in a situation where work is positive and people feel good about what they've accomplished in a day's work, versus sitting around being nervous about things we can't control.
So wrapping it all up, this is, as I hear it, it's taken complexity out of complexity, so to speak, and make it more simple in order to act, and that way not sit around letting that anxiety sort of float, and making people use their hearts and their legs to do something. As you said, what do I do today? What do I do this morning? Act, and don't just sit back and think.
The old adage about idle hands. Idle hands is not good. We need to be doing something, and so yes, and I think it is tricky, but I think it's what leaders need to do today, is how do we make people find as much comfort, but also to feel as productive and contributing as they can within all of the anxiety that we're dealing with. I was just in Poland earlier this week. They've got a war very close, and they're very challenged. And the big question is, what are we doing today? We're waiting and seeing what's going to happen, but what can we do today is to make sure that we're proud and we've accomplished as much as we can, and that we're not just sitting around, worrying about what's going to happen. So it's very, very important, and it's around the entire world. Everybody's worried about how to deal with the worry. And I think the research is so clear. We need to know where we're going, but then the focus needs to be on what can we do right now, today, together, so that we can make the best of it.
And you took the words out of my mouth. That was actually my final question, your last advice, but you just gave that. Scott, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and I am inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lars. Thanks for having me.